Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie McCoy. I'm the founder of Bold Blind Beauty. Welcome to our first Awakening the Senses panel discussion for 2022. We're real excited to have two of our wonderful interns host this particular event. I'm now going to turn it over to my fabulous Chief Communications Officer, Nazreen Buddha, to take it from here.
Hey, thank you so much, Steph. Hi, everyone. I'm Nazreen, the Chief Communications Officer here at Bold Blind Beauty. And this is, in fact, our spring into Awakening the Senses. And for those who don't know what this feature is all about, it's usually about relationships, intimacy, sexuality, exploring our sexuality, being blind, and or visually impaired, because we can have relationships too, right? So therefore, today's first session, Spring into Awakening the Senses, is about romantic bonds, relationships, texting, sexting. Hold on.
I think we lost.
Sorry, I had a call coming in. Let me just.
Yeah, no worries. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just keep going. Just.
Yeah, I was just going to continue to say that on sexting. Let me start again. It's on romantic bonds, relationships, sexting, and all the risks and challenges in the age of the internet. And that's our topic today. And it's framed around social media and the internet. And we have our wonderful interns here to take the matter forward, take the whole session forward. We have Iliana and we have Rosa. And Rosa is actually not here right now. She is coming very shortly. And but I'm going to toss it over to Iliana to take forward.
Okay, so I want to thank you all for coming. It's very exciting to have you all here, both our panelists and the few, I know I see a few guests in the house, so thank you everyone for coming. So basically what we're here to do is I'm going to, and along with Rosa, who just joined, hi Rosa, I'm going to
join the meeting,
calling on our lovely panelists, who I will let introduce themselves in just a second. And then again, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Iliana. I'm one of the interns here at Bold Blind Beauty. I'm finishing up my senior year of high school and be going to college soon. And I will be one of the moderators for today. Rosa, if you're here, you can quickly introduce yourself. We'll pass it over to the panelists and then we can get started with the questions. And at the end, we are going to have a short Q&A session that I will explain when we get to that section. Sounds good, everyone?
Yep.
All right.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rosa, and I'm currently an intern at Bold Blind Beauty, and I'm also one of the moderators. I'm currently in college. I'm studying music, and I would love to introduce the panelists for this panel.
All right, so I'll quickly just go down the list. We have, let's see if I know how to count, at least 6 wonderful panelists here today. So I'm just gonna quickly go down the list of our panelists and you guys can introduce yourselves. So we'll start with Gabby. Just a quick, no more than like 30-second introduction.
I got you. Hi everyone, my name is Gabby. I'm actually a contributor here at Bold Blind Beauty. I actually just graduated college with a bachelor's in communications. I'm really passionate about disability rights, advocacy, mental health, and I'll be starting a job with the American Foundation for the Blind on Monday, and I'm really excited to be here with you all.
Well, congrats, Gabby. That is exciting. And thank you for being here, Jahron.
Hey, how you guys doing? My name is Jahron Black. I am a hip hop artist, songwriter. I am the president of a nonprofit organization for blind and adaptive sports here in New York City. It is great to be here with all of you today.
Thank you so much. And that's great stuff you're doing. And we're so excited to have you. Emilee?
Hey everyone, it's Emilee. I am happy to be one of the Bold Blind Beauty Ambassadors this year, and I'm joining you from Ontario, Canada. I also have my own kind of nonprofit disability organization, and then I'm also a recent early childhood education graduate.
Nice.
Yeah, you're also doing some great stuff. Thank you so much for being here. I believe we also have Ken, correct? Oh, okay. I think Ken got kicked off. So we'll come back.
Yes.
Okay.
He's back.
Ken, do you mind just giving like a brief, like maybe 30-second introduction, just so everyone can get to know you?
Absolutely. Sorry, I don't know what happened to my connection. It was like everybody was gone. I'm Ken Meeker. I am from Phoenix, Arizona. I am the owner of Vitality Career Coaching. I'm a career and executive coach, and I also am a public speaker on DEI advocacy, and I also do consulting on the same subject. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy that you're here, and we also, like everyone else, doing some wonderful stuff. Bethany.
Hi everyone, my name is Bethany Cody. I am a visually impaired writer, disability advocate, and also one of the Bold Blind Beauty Ambassadors this year. And I live in Adelaide, South Australia.
All right, it's amazing. And thank you again for being here. And last but not least, Lily.
Hello, my name is Lily. I have a bachelor's degree in creative writing. I'm also currently the editorial and PR intern at UsableNet. And finally, I blog and vlog about just the blind experience and try my best to do what I can to advocate.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. So the way this is just gonna work is, as I said, you're going to at least one, like 2 or 3 of you will be randomly called on to answer these questions that we've prepared for you. We want these answers to not be too long, maybe 2 to 3 minutes max. And when you're not answering, it would be best if you can just stay muted. And without further ado, let's get on to the questions. And I will let Rosa start us off.
I could choose anybody, right?
Yep.
Okay. Lily, how do you feel do you feel that social media changes your life? Okay, so sorry, Liana, I got the questions have answers to it, so I'm kind of confused.
No, just focus on the questions. It's fine. Just focus on the questions. And actually with the first question, we're just gonna throw it out to all of you.
The first question is gonna go to all of you.
I'm just gonna quickly call on each one of you, just to make it a little organized. But yeah, so as Rosa said, just and we'll start with Lily. How do you feel like social media changes your life, if at all?
I feel in some ways it makes me more conscious of pictures to capture a moment, even if I don't necessarily post them. I try to keep my social media active, but I realize that especially during high school, like sometimes I take pictures only on special occasions, maybe a birthday or something. But now if I'm going out, I don't know, I find myself taking pictures of like really interesting meals, or yeah, I capture moments a lot more, whether or not I plan to post them.
Okay. Ken?
So social media, when it first started with like MySpace and all that kind of stuff, and when Facebook started, I was huge into it. In fact, I promoted, I was like, this is amazing. You connect with people all over the place that have moved away or whatever. But as time moved on, and the toxicity of it kind of started to show, I detached from it for a very long time. And I'm really only on Facebook for my business. It's good and bad. And I think that there's a lot of changes that need to happen with social media in order for it to really be something that is a truly positive thing, because I think it's kind of done a dark turn, if that's my take on it, as to where it is right now.
Okay, Gabby?
I like social media for the fact that, I'm a content creator, and I feel like there's a lot of benefits when it comes to how you brand yourself and promote your work. So I really do like sharing inspirational things as often as I can. I also, and just like Lily, I kind of share pictures whenever I'm out or I'm doing something fun. But I also think that social media does have a toxic side to it. And I try my best to disconnect from it as often as I can. But being a content creator, I sort of struggle with that, just because I like keeping people up to date on different topics that I think would be really interesting.
Okay. Bethany?
I think social media has actually really changed my life for the better. So as someone who grew up quite shy, is still quite quiet and shy, it's actually allowed me to sort of step out of my comfort zone a bit and take on some opportunities that I otherwise would know nothing about, and connect with so many incredible people that has really expanded and broadened the world for me. So yeah, and I definitely agree with Gabby and Lily about capturing moments that otherwise, would just pass you by.
I love that. Jahron?
So I think social media definitely changed my life for the better. But social media is a place where a lot of people can live a facade. And I think that, you have to be careful with, the people that you may choose to interact with on social media. But the plus side to it is, I think that there is a community out there for anybody, whether that's in the real world or on social media. And so you just kind of have to surround yourself with the environment that breeds the best energy into your life. And so, social media is a great tool, and it definitely allows you to connect with everybody around the world. So I would take away more positives than negatives from social media if you're using it correctly.
That's wonderful. Did I go down the list completely?
I think it's just me, Emily, that you missed.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Emily.
No worries. I think I really just have to second what Bethany said, in that I grew up in a really rural community and only had access to a certain amount of people. And I truly had no exposure to people with disabilities or even people of different cultures. And so when I started getting into social media and sharing myself authentically and surrounding myself with people who I felt reflected my own values and really kind of encouraged me, and creating my own positive space. And I know there is a lot of negativity around social media, but when you kind of have control over creating a space that really is supportive, I truly have found it life-changing, in that I've met so many amazing people, especially over the pandemic, who I've literally never met in person, and made amazing friends that I know wouldn't have been possible without social media. And really just having inspiring content daily that connecting with people who are truly role models in my life. And so that is kind of what I've used it for. And when you can make it a space like that, I think it can be incredible.
That's wonderful. So, Jahron kind of gave me one of our a good segue into one of our other questions, which is because he mentioned stuff about facades. Have you ever had an experience? If any of you are in the online dating sector, so I'll just throw it out. I'm gonna throw it out to Lily and to Gabby or Jahron, and if any of you have not had this experience, you can just let me know. But have you ever had an experience where, because of how easy it is for someone to fool you on the internet, where someone has not been who they said they were? And I'll start with Lily.
I have been lucky enough to not have that experience, but that's something that I'm always very hyper aware of. And I won't say that it's always in the back of my mind, but yeah, it's something that I'm conscious of happening. And I truly hope that I never have that experience, but to date, I thankfully have not.
That's good. Gabby.
I think for me, it's I don't really like the online dating world. But I have had the situation with people that I have met, not necessarily like on like a dating app, but through like a mutual friend that was a virtual friend of theirs, where I kind of felt a little suspicious about who the person was. And I'm also very, very careful when it comes to meeting people virtually, because you just never know. And especially having a disability, I feel like that is a very tricky road to go down. So I'm always very mindful of who I connect with, but not only just that, but how much information I choose to kind of share with that person that I've met virtually.
Completely understandable. And Jahron?
Right. So I feel like I've had much of the same sentiments from Gabby and Lily. I've never experienced it directly via a dating app, but I definitely have spoken to several individuals, but one individual in particular where I did not know, in layman's terms, I didn't know what I was getting into, right? Outwardly the person presented to be, a great person, but you never know, truly what you're getting into and how much baggage or what their mental state may be like. And so I think I was fooled or bamboozled in that regard of, dealing with someone who, ultimately was not somebody that I should have, dealt with from the beginning,
Yeah, definitely. Rosa, would you like to ask a question?
My camera is kind of acting up right now, so give me a second.
No problem. So while Rosa figures this out, I'll just keep going with the questions.
I got you.
Okay.
Have any of you received any sexting messages, and how did you feel about that?
And we'll just throw it out to the three panelists who have not gotten a chance to answer. So Bethany, Emilee, and Ken. So we'll start with Ken.
Yes. Putting it. Yeah, I have. And so my feeling about it is I've gotten it from people who I didn't know, and that's really uncomfortable and really awkward and really weird. It's like, I don't even know you. Why would you send me that? But then there's been occasions where it's like been somebody who I've been like dating, or, where there was interest, where there was a mutual interest expressed, where we had known each other, but it was nothing it was stuff that I wouldn't be ashamed to show my mom. I mean, it was a little risque, but nothing inappropriate, nothing, overly revealing. It would be like, stuff you might see in an R-rated movie, but nothing and totally new, nothing that I wouldn't show my mom. But I know that I have received stuff from people I didn't know that was stuff I would rather not have seen.
Completely understandable. Emily?
I was gonna say it's Emily. I have to second that. Like, coming from complete strangers, you're like, what on earth? Like, what enticed you to just out of the blue do this? But I've also been in a long distance relationship for like 5 years. So of course I have. And you know what? It keeps the love alive. You gotta have a little bit of spicy time, and it can be fun when you do it in the right way with somebody who you care about.
Yes, that makes complete sense. And Bethany?
So I personally haven't, but I think that if you're participating in it with someone that you know and someone that you trust, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Completely understandable. While we're on the topic of texting, I'd like to ask, and I'll throw this out to Lily, Emily, and Ken. How comfortable are you with texting, and do you feel like that has taken away of like anything from like, getting to meet people in person? Do you prefer that more, or is it fun to you to meet people online through texting, and how has that like results with that been for you?
It's Emily. I can start this one. I think you can learn a lot about somebody by the way that they text. And I think it also gives people this feeling of like they can be a little bit more out there than potentially they maybe are in person. And I have like vibe checked so many people through texting. You meet them in person, you have a short, like, you learn so much about people's personal lives that I can immediately be like, you are not my person. We do not vibe. I like, if the conversation dies right away, I'm like, okay, you're not for me. But if they can kind of keep it going, keep it engaged, it gives people a little bit of comfort behind the screen, which they will either use to, or they will not utilize it and make you super uncomfortable. And you can tell that. And I mean, not to say that I'm a fan of ghosting, but you can easily avoid people and kind of get out there in the conversation. And so I've kind of enjoyed it. Now, I don't like texting long conversations, and I find it quite repetitive to pick up my phone. So the physical act of texting is not my favorite, but I do see it beneficial in some relationships, especially when they're early starting on.
Okay.
This is Ken. I very much share the same attitude about texting. One of my gripes is when people want to have very long, intense conversations via text. I'm like, just pick up the phone and call me. We can get this done in 5 minutes versus an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And the one thing about texting is context is often lost. Somebody could be, you could use the same phrasing, but it could be taken as, like aggressive or not aggressive, or, oftentimes people will say something that is taken out of context, and there's this, that something that would be easily solved in just a phone call. So I actively try to only text if it's short. And something that can be resolved relatively quickly. If a person is offering
to call me instead of texting, you are now my best friend. Like, honestly.
Yeah, I'd much rather talk to somebody most of the time.
So this is Lily, and I enjoy texting, but I love talking. I'm very much a talker. I enjoy in-person conversations, whether that's verbal or like actually physically in person. I feel like, I do appreciate that you can sort of think a little bit and formulate what you want to respond, but I also how you want to respond. But I also really appreciate the back and forth of an actual conversation, especially whether it's a deep conversation or if it's like banter. Like sometimes there's just something that's lost in text. To kind of go off what Ken said, sometimes you can lose the context of how someone meant to say something. But on top of that, I think that while you can get to know someone through the way they text, I think you can also get to know someone in how they respond verbally, in what they say and how they respond, and catching that initial context rather than having to go back for clarification.
Okay, those are some really interesting points y'all brought up. So I'll let Rosa throw out the next question to Bethany, Gabby, and Jahron.
Gabby, do you find it harder to believe someone? To believe what people tell you on the internet versus what they tell you in person?
It's hard because I feel like so during the pandemic, I met a lot of people virtually who were sort of in the blind community, but also content creators. And I felt like they helped a lot versus the people that I sort of knew in person, with a lot of the advice that they gave me on different things. But it's always sometimes hard to sort of say, because I do know that I'm an overthinker and I tend to think of like all the things that are not really good to think about when it comes to meeting people virtually or having conversations virtually. But it's social media, and I feel like a lot of things can get spread quickly that are not necessarily true. And so I am very mindful about, again, I'm always checking, I pay attention to people's vibes and how they sort of act and their energy. And even if it's a virtual thing, I still sort of notice the context of how they sort of say things. And I'm very mindful about that. So it's very difficult to say whether it's yes or no, but sometimes it's easier to believe certain people and harder to believe other people.
Okay.
All right, so the same question is gonna go to Jahron.
So I believe people equally, whether it's on social media or in person. Words are words, and words matter, but actions matter more. And so if I meet you on social media and you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z, versus if I met you in person and you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z, I believe it the same percentage, the same amount. Because what you actually show me and what you actually prove are, the things that actually matter. Especially in this industry that I'm in with music, a lot of things are just surface level, like conversation pieces, and people are like, oh yeah, we got to work, we got to do music, we got to do this, we got to do that. And whether you said that to me over social media or you said that to me in person, there's usually no follow-up. And so you may take them serious in that moment, but then there's not really a follow-up to it. Like, oh, okay, like next week we're going to actually do something, and you reach out and then there's no response. So it doesn't matter whether it's social media or in person. What you say is what you say in that moment. And I believe it with a grain of salt until I see the actions.
Okay, so the same question is gonna go to Bethany.
So I'm kind of naturally quite skeptical of what people tell me on the internet. I'm well aware that there are people online that exist purely just to scam or harass other people. And it's really hard sometimes to confirm online if someone is actually genuine. If you don't have any friends or contacts in common or like a mutual network of trust, it can be really difficult to figure out if they're like real. But it's tricky at the same time because not everyone has an ulterior motive, but some do. And I feel like it's not really a risk that you want to take. So yeah, it's definitely really tricky.
Okay, those really interesting points. So I'm gonna now ask Gabby, Emilee, and Ken, what would you all say are some advantages and maybe disadvantages of, finding something as serious as like who you want to spend the rest of your life with on the internet?
Ooh,
I think the biggest advantage, first of all, is just bigger pond to fish in, to put it. In that, like, there's access to so many more people who you maybe wouldn't have met before if you weren't on the internet and you were just in your community. But that also poses the disadvantage of potentially finding somebody who you can't get together with in person, and there's more access to people being fake and stuff like that. But those are the kind of ones that come to mind immediately.
I definitely agree. I feel like there's advantages because, again, you can sort of network with people and have that connection, but the disadvantage also comes when it comes to catfishing and all these sorts of things that could happen. And even though you might know this person well enough on social media and you feel like you have that good connection, there's still that question of like, okay, well, if I was to meet you in person, like, are you the person that you are saying that you are, or is it just, all just for fun? And so I feel like it's a two-way sort of thing to think about. So yeah, I would definitely agree.
So my experience is the person who I've been with for over 2 years, I met online initially, but we met a couple of years before we actually met. And then we kind of circled back to each other. And so I think it just, it's always luck of the draw, whether you meet them in person, whether you meet them online. But I'm a big believer in you trust your instinct, trust your gut. If something feels off, then go with that. Whether it's online, whether it's in person, doesn't matter. But my personal experience is, overall, it's been very positive because the person I'm with now is amazing. And that's, we met through online dating.
I love all those points. I was going to maybe say to the other three panelists, we might pass this question on to you if you are interested.
Sure.
Yeah, so tell us what you think. Do you agree with your fellow panelists?
So I do agree with them to an extent. I think it was Emilee who said that there's a greater pool of like people to choose from. And I think that's both a pro and a con because there's a lot more people. You get to meet people from different areas, different walks of life. But I think the con there is, well, I do agree with Emilee that a con is definitely you may not be able to meet them in person, or like that might be harder. The con that I actually think about is I feel like sometimes a lot of people find it harder to pick one person because it's like, wow, this person is amazing, but there are so many more amazing people. And it's sort of having too many options sometimes can end up becoming a con, just as it also is a pro.
Oh yeah, definitely. Any of the other panelists want to take on this question?
I need their question restated, honestly.
Oh, just no problem. What are, in your opinion, what are some advantages and disadvantages of possibly, finding someone as serious as a life partner on the internet? Like, do you think it's, because
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I listened to the responses, and I highly agree with a lot of the responses. And also, like, I'm pretty sure somebody said it, but distance, right? Distance can be a thing. Like, you meet somebody that lives in Australia or Wales or something like that, and you just like me and this person connect so well, but you have to remember you only connect via the internet so well, right? And being in person together breeds an entirely new world of challenges and things that you can, face with this person. So I may love talking to you and I think that you're a great person, but then when we start living together, I don't like your cleanliness habits, or you may not be able to cook or anything of that nature, right? And so yes, ultimately those are things that can be worked on, but those things can be things that can damage us, especially if like I moved from New York all the way to where you are, or vice versa, right? And then we kind of start finding these things out after we have already spent an exorbitant amount of money to get to know each other in a physical sense.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
I
agree. Yeah.
really like I like your answers. Yes, you can speak.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the cleanliness thing, especially. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a deal breaker. That
Yeah,
would be a deal breaker.
Yes, all of those things are very important. Like I think when you are able to meet somebody in person, you can kind of get a sense of how they like to keep their hygiene and the way that they speak to you, right? Like people talk in your face, right? Especially like if you went out to have drinks or you did something like, people start talking in your face, their breath may stink, or you get to shake their hand and feel if they keep their nails groomed, because we're blind, right? So we're not going to be able to see like if they got a stain on their shirt sometimes. So it's like, other things to us as being visually impaired mean a lot more. So those in-person interactions, does the guy wear cologne? Does the woman wear perfume? And, all of these different things, they matter. And I can't tell those things via the internet.
Yeah. Can I just briefly mention something really quick, just to kind of like add on to that too?
Of course, we love the free-flowing conversation.
I feel like, especially being blind, there's such a big misconception, like, oh, but you're blind, like, why do you care about, how you take care of yourself? And it's like, that's still something that we think about, like, you want to make sure you have good hygiene just for yourself. It's not about like trying to impress somebody else, but it's also about how you take care of yourself. What's your self-care routine? How do you, on a day-to-day basis, like, what are you doing for yourself? It's not to appear like a certain way to somebody else. It's just how you keep up with your own cleanliness and how you act, and just not even just how you act, but just, like I said, and like Jahron said, like, does this person have long nails? How do they take care of their hygiene? It's like, those are things that are important. And I think like a lot of the time for like a lot of the girls that I know that wear makeup, it's like, people are like, oh, but you can't see. So like, why are you putting on makeup? And it's like, it's just those things. And I think a lot of the time too, people tend to forget that, yes, we are blind, but also we're people too, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, not to impress somebody else, but just so that we make sure that we're.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, thank you for
add-
saying that.
I did want to add one additional thing that I thought, first Jahron and Gabby, who made really good points about not knowing how someone acts. I think one final point too is that only speaking to someone online, you don't see how they interact with other people. Are they rude to waitstaff? Are they rude to, just people in their lives? Are they condescending? And I think that's one other like important disadvantage that can sometimes come of only meeting someone online.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to throw this question because you are all such a very well-spoken group. So it's I was wondering if any of you who have done the online dating scene, and this goes out to any of you who might want to take a grab at it, if you feel comfortable enough, what is like an interesting online dating story you might have? Again, even if you have them and you don't feel comfortable, you do not have to answer this. It's just kind of going out to the group, anyone who's done it, if you care to share.
So I have a short, interesting story. It really wasn't like on a dating website once again, but it was like maybe via like Facebook or Instagram or something of that nature, where I started talking to a young lady, and we had some pretty good conversations. And what ultimately ended up happening is, I believe one day she was telling me something that had to do involving her cable. And she asked me, did I drive? And when I told her I do not drive, all of a sudden, like, she did not want to talk to me anymore. Like, I don't even remember if like she was like bashing me or something, like saying like, how you a man and you don't drive, whatever the case may be. I didn't feel the need to disclose that I was blind. And so I kind of just left it where it was at. And I may have like deleted this person off of Facebook, but like maybe they started like following me on Instagram and stuff like that as well. And then once they saw that I was an artist and I made music and I was always traveling and stuff like that, it's like that whole kind of conversation and the way they felt towards me switched up again. And it was like, oh, I love that you always traveling and you so passionate about your music and you this and you that. But I didn't want to talk no more because you judged me just because I said I didn't drive, as if like somebody that does not drive is the end of the world.
I have a similar kind of short one where somebody had reached out and started having conversations with me that were like definitely hitting on me. And it got to the point where I like, it kind of came up similar to that, where it was like, oh, do you drive? How do you get around? Whatever. And it came up that I was blind. It was whatever the situation was. I was like, it's unavoidable. I have to mention this. And immediately the response was, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of you. As if like blind meant like the absolute no independence, like that sort of stuff. And I mentioned, like, I was like, oh no, that's fine. But no, he like really pushed it. Like, I will take care of you. And needless to say, the conversation ended there.
I've had that experience as well.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I have 3 really quick stories because I could not choose between the insanity of each one of them. But as I said, I can make them quick. So one of them is my first ever date that I went on with someone from an app. We had changed our plans because he found out that there was a fair happening. And it was like, okay, cool. This is a very nice, relaxed way to meet each other. He's dominoes table. He's I've been back to Island years, and he proceeded to play dominoes for the next several hours, and I was with other people, and I was just like, okay, I'm not sure. And then when I was finally leaving, he was like, oh, did you have a good time? Not particularly. And then the other 2 stories was on another date, we just ran all of his errands. Like, we went to IKEA, and I think he needed to like fix his car, and it was strange. I mean, we had food at the end of it all, but that was strange.
Great idea.
And the final
Build
one,
an IKEA
right?
show.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to know if you actually are going to get along, though.
Exactly.
And then the final story was very insane. I was talking to someone and we had only been texting, and he was like, oh, like there's something really cool I want you to see. And I was like, oh, I'm visually impaired. I very likely won't be able to see it. And he's like, oh, my dog's going blind and I'm really struggling to work with him. And I was like, you do realize that a dog and a human are different creatures, like we require different needs. Suffice to say, I unmatched, but I just wanted to let him know, like, dogs and humans, very different needs.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me those stories.
So I'll go with mine. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. It's actually about who I've been with for just over the last 2 years. In 2018, I was my mom's caregiver. She was passing away from cancer. And he and I had been chatting back then, and we were supposed to meet up. And this was in 2018. And but my mom had something happen. And so she had to go to the emergency room. And so I didn't show up. I kind of, I was like, all right, well, this is way more important. And then afterwards, I was like, I'm so sorry, but here, I didn't tell you, but I'm my mom's caregiver. She's passing away from cancer, blah, 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 blah. And it was fine. But then he was going to move out of town, yada, yada, yada. Circle to about just before the pandemic, we reconnected. And that's when that's what led to where we are now. And once we met up back again, I was looking at my phone and I was like, oh crap, that's the same guy from way back then. Like, it didn't even occur to me initially that I was like, we had started talking way back in 2018. And the the blindness issue was never a thing. He works in healthcare, so it's never even been an issue. And is very understanding about all of that. And it's just, my experience with it has been pretty tremendous this time around. But yeah, you never know who you're going to get. It's like, a lottery. He irons my shirts, and that keeps, that's anyone who will iron my clothes. I'll eat out of their hand.
Listen, that's an important one.
I hate ironing.
I love all these stories. Very interesting. I did actually have a follow-up question because from Jahron's story. And this kind of also goes out to all of you. Since on the internet you can kind of be almost anyone because you're behind a screen, how do you ever feel the need to not tell people that you are blind or visually impaired because you don't really need to, and seeing how it goes? Or do you feel like it's better to be more upfront? Just quick, and then we could get on to the other questions before we start the Q&A portion.
It's Emilee. As somebody who has used social media as an advocacy platform, I have never not advertised that I'm blind, and really using it as a way to educate people, which, gets its pros and cons, but that's personally me, of just kind of always putting it out there at the forefront as an education piece.
Before I really started becoming a content creator, I was mainly only using Instagram as like, just, to put pictures up, whatever, if I was hanging out with friends, if I was doing anything interesting. And then I sort of cleaned up my Instagram to just make it look the way I wanted it to. And I'm still working on that. But I don't think I never really felt uncomfortable disclosing that I was blind on social media, because the reason I really became a content creator was to advocate for, disability rights and spread awareness to the blind community. And I just felt like if I could share those things on social media for people to see and to listen to and to sort of educate themselves and to help educate people, then why not, and I agree with what Emilee said. So yeah.
I don't tell people that I'm blind any more than I tell them that I'm gay. I'm just myself. If it's relevant, I bring it up. If it's relevant to the conversation, I absolutely, I don't have any shame in it, but it's personal, it's my business. And, it's one of those things where if I feel like telling you, I'll tell you if it's relevant. Other than that, I think it's a personal choice for anybody, really. It's your business. Who you choose to tell, it's up to you.
Right. Most of the time, I would say I lead with it, depending on who I am talking to, more so in person than online. But my sentiments are honestly just like Ken's. Like, if it's relevant and I have to say it, I definitely will say it. I'm not ashamed. And if I decide to make like a dating profile, like, I will put it in my dating profile so that there's no confusion. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
So I don't have it in my bio like, hey, I'm blind, but I have so many, like, let's say a question on a dating app is like, what's one of your favorite things to do? I've written like reading on my braille note. Like, I'll just add little things. Most people gloss over it. Most people don't read through an entire profile. My eyes are also pretty distinctive, and most people also just gloss over it, or they'll text me and be like, hey, were you like struck by lightning? That's amazing. What happened to your eyes? And I'm like, I'm blind. And I'm like, that's not real. How can you be blind and use a dating app? But when none of those things happen, I always just bring it up in an organic manner. If something comes up, someone talks about driving, I'm like, hey, it's not legal for me to drive, like, I'll make a joke of it, or because I'm perfectly fine disclosing, but a lot of people think that it's a bigger deal than I feel it is. And I think that it should be. And so I'm just like, here, if I make a joke of it, if I, just bring it up in a very organic matter, rather than like, hey, I need to tell you something. And it's like, what's going on? It's like, I'm blind, like, then you're also going to feel like, wow, this is a very sensitive subject. And this is not how I feel about it. So while I always bring it up before I've met someone in person, Even if it's just like, hey, we're meeting up, and I'm like, great, for the record, you'll have to look out for me because I'm blind, blah, blah, blah. I also have friends who are like, nah, I'll just show up. My thing is, I don't want to deal with anyone's nonsense in person, so we'll disclose and get it all out of the way before I've met you. In person, I have a cane, and again, my eyes are very distinctive, so there's never a need for me to disclose in person.
I like the thing that you said about it making it a joke, because I use Uber and Lyft a lot, because I don't drive.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, so that's one of the ways that I found that's kind of interesting to just, be like, well, that's why I'm like, that's why you do the driving, is because it would be better if that I don't drive. If you ever see me driving a car, that means wherever direction I'm going, you want to go the same direction, because it's really bad from whatever I'm driving away from. And so, yeah, I think making light of it, I think that helps people be, more comfortable, not necessarily more comfortable, but it takes away any sort of tension, because you can laugh at yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, it makes the air lighter.
Exactly. Like, you might not be allowed to make a blind joke, but you can laugh at the one that I just made.
Exactly.
I just want to add one quick thing. I do disclose, but I also feel like I've also disclosed it in a way where I'm like, I'm this and I'm this, and then I'm like, oh, and I'm also blind. Because I feel like a lot of the time, the minute you say, oh, you're blind, like, people automatically think, well, that's your entire personality. That's just who you are. And it's like, no, there's a million more things that are interesting about me besides my disability. And I think educating people, and also not only just educating people, but just like showing it to the world is just important, because there's so many misconceptions surrounding blindness, as I'm sure everybody here knows. But I think when people automatically jump to the conclusion, like, oh my God, and then I hate the little babyish, pitiful comments where they're like, oh my God, you're blind, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why? You didn't cause me to be blind. Like, I don't know, So I definitely disclose, but in a way where it's like, if you really want to know more about me, then this is kind of who I am and what I do. So yeah.
I know we keep adding on, but Gabby, one quick thing that I do, and so I hadn't had too many people say I'm sorry, but the last person who did, I was like, why? I'm not. And they were just like, what do you mean? And, for me, sometimes people are just stumped, and they're like, wait, no. And I'm like, don't backtrack. Like, what? Like, part of me is being flippant, but I'm also genuinely curious, because let's dispel that myth now and figure out if this is going anywhere, or if I'm just educating you. And
I do the same thing. I do the exact same thing. Why? I'm not.
Gotta love a good blind joke, though.
That was great. You guys, the energy you're all giving is amazing. I love all your answers. So we're gonna go to the last question, and if anyone's interested, we can go to a short Q&A. But just to all of you, I'll let Rosa ask this question. And so yeah, thank you everyone so far. You've been doing great.
Give me a second. Are we missing a question? Because I think we touched on all of the questions, unless you want me to ask something.
The very, very last one at the end. We didn't touch on that one.
All right. Have you, or do you think you could find a life partner through online dating?
Yes.
Short answer is yes.
I mean, I'm not planning on breaking up with who I'm with now. So yeah, hopefully it stays that way.
I love that for you. My answer is a little bit more complicated. I have a handful of friends who have been in long-term relationships, and my sister just married someone she met through online dating several years back. So I definitely believe it's possible. I'm just extremely skeptical from my like online dating experience, just terrible conversationalists, ghosting, and also just from reading like the various think pieces out there on the blogs, and with titles like "What's wrong with the online dating scene?" and "What's wrong with modern dating?" Like just seeing so many other people's stories has really left me underwhelmed and skeptical. I'm definitely open to the experience because clearly I'm dating online, but I'm very skeptical at the same time.
I agree. I feel like it is possible, but similar to what Lily just said, but it's also like I've always been the type of person, like I like having conversations with people in person. Not that I wouldn't have one with someone on a dating app, but personally I feel like the connection is a little bit different. But yeah, like I said, I definitely think it's possible. I wouldn't, sort of exit out. So yeah.
I feel like I knew the person that I wanted to marry in life, and I did not meet them on any online dating websites. I met them in person and got to know them in person. So I would probably say no. I'm probably never going to meet the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with online. But life, you never know. Life has a funny way of happening. So we'll see. But, as far as I know, the best interaction I've ever had with somebody was in person. And so that's kind of where I'm going to keep it.
Back in 2018, in the same year that I got my RP diagnosis, I met my now fiance. So we've known each other for 4 years. And it's definitely not the norm, but it can happen. Sometimes you just have to kind of trawl through a lot of time wasters and a lot of people who are online dating for really only one thing. But yeah, it definitely can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Yes, congrats.
So that's our questions at least, but we will open it up for very short Q&A if anyone would like to. So if anyone has any questions, the way we'll do this is we have our wonderful friend Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hello, darling.
And so if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat. You can address it to everyone. You can address it to specific panelists who you want to hear something from. And we will try our best to get through the questions. So and if
I have a question.
Of course, Andy, go ahead.
Let me start off. Okay, so I think all of you are exceptional, and I really wanted to say that. You're pretty amazing. So here's a question for everybody. Anybody can answer this. As a seeing person, how can individuals outside help you guys? What are you looking for? What helps you? And anybody can answer that.
Do you mean in general or in a day-to-day?
Yeah.
In general,
Thank
on
you.
day to day. In a general, on day to day. Yeah. Because everybody has a conception, right? Everybody believes, like I think one of you said, you get comments, oh my gosh, you can't see, I feel sorry for you. And you say, why? And I think that's absolutely wonderful, right? So what do you want seeing persons to know?
We can ask for help if we need it.
I was just about
Love
to say
you.
that. Never, the key word is no assumptions.
Mhm.
Or I feel like if you're like, okay, maybe they'll ask me, it's also perfectly fine to say, do you need help? But don't assume that I need help.
Yeah. Don't do something for me that I can do for myself. It's the easiest way to piss me off.
Yes.
Kind of on top, like cherry on top of that, because that's exactly what I was thinking. But like when people have a willingness to learn, like, you know, when you recognize that you have assumptions and you are willing to deepen your understanding, you like, we tell you, hey, I'm blind, and you say, oh, like what does that mean to you, and like let us give the opportunity to do a little bit of educating if that's our thing. Like I totally understand that there's blind people who are like, I'm blind and I don't want to take the time to educate you, and that's fine, but understand at least that person's needs and what being blind means for them. But a willingness to learn and be educated on the topics and the different assumptions and stereotypes that you may have is like always exceptional to me when people come up with that.
So
Um,
like to piggyback off of what you just said, that's one of the reasons I'm with who I'm with, is his openness and his willingness to just learn and immerse himself and find out more and realize that, and be open to, you know, we had a conversation just the other day, like we were on a 10-day vacation, and I have a little bit of usable sight, and I tripped and I fell, and I was very frustrated, not because I cared about what anyone else think, but it's something that would only happen to somebody who wouldn't see. And
Yeah.
so we were having a long conversation about that, and that he understood that it's not about vanity or shame or any of that stuff. It's just, it's frustrating. You get tired of it at a certain point. That I think is just exceptional. One of the reasons that he's so amazing. When you can find like people like that, hang on to him.
I just
lovely.
I just want to quickly add to what Emilee was saying. I think knowing that you feel the need to be educated and want to learn about, you know, what it's like having this disability and what it's like being blind, because I've had people come up to me and just ask me questions, and I don't mind answering people's questions, but most of the time people will ask really inappropriate questions, and when I tell them that I don't feel comfortable answering them, they will still continue to pry. And I feel like if you can be respectful and say, hey, like, you know, if I tell you that I can't see, or that I ask you for help and you feel like you want to ask a question, you know, just don't make an assumption. Don't just jump to the conclusion and say, okay, well, this is my question, and then just sort of go into a ramble about random things that we as blind people don't necessarily think about. So I would just sort of say that that's like a big one for me as well.
This is great. If I could just bottle up everything and then put everything out there, that'd be wonderful. So I have another question. Let me just start asking questions. Why don't I, right? So all of you, it seems that you are on social media, you're using that platform. What are the difficulties that you find using social media? I'm going to say this because I have difficulty with social media. It is, and Steph and I speak about this all the time. It sucks me, consumes me, and I'm totally afraid of it. So how do you feel about social media? I know it was a topic for the night, but do you have any issues with it, using that platform?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think my main issue often comes from not always being able to fully interact with content. On something like Instagram, someone might just post a photo, and if you have caption with context, then that helps definitely. But if there's nothing and there's no alt text description, then it's useless to me. And then I sift through the comments like, oh, maybe I can find out what it is here. And everybody's just like, it's so beautiful. What's beautiful? I want to understand. I want to know too. Or if it's a video with no audio, no nothing, and just no description. So yeah, sometimes it's the ability to fully engage with content.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, but I would also say the lack of accessibility that comes with Instagram stories. Because I know, like, a lot of the time, like if I'm with friends or I'm with family and like we take a picture or something, people don't often use like the feed to tag people anymore. Now they're doing like the stories, and I always have to like I have to sort of ask them like, well, you know, thank you, I appreciate that you are sharing it in your story, but do you mind telling me what you wrote? Because I obviously can't see what the text says. I don't know. And there's no like alt text for stories. And I think adding to Lily's point, it's hard. I love Instagram, but I also feel like it's a little bit harder to interact because of the sort of lack of accessibility that comes with it. Sometimes people put up memes, and voiceover will briefly read out the text of it, but it doesn't give you the full scope of what's actually happening. So it's harder to interact with your sighted followers or whatever that's on there and laugh at the joke or comment and say, yeah, that's really nice or something. So yeah.
Thank you, Gabby. That was beautiful.
Good points. I'll just throw it one more time back out to the audience. Also, since Andy is here, we have Andy's lovely eyes. If it's easier to raise your hand, Andy can, look out for that as well. If you can, just try not to just unmute yourself, but you can raise your hand, and if Andy sees it, you can unmute yourself. And then if not, we'll just go to the closing. I'll give you guys a second in case anyone in the audience does want to ask anything.
I have a question. Is it important to be early on a first date?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I don't know if that, you want to be on time.
Yes, that's what I was just about to say. Early on time, or if you're going to be late, there's nothing wrong with communicating that, versus just showing up eventually. Or people have a tendency, if I don't know, they're going to be half an hour late and they'll be like, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And then it's half an hour later and they're still not there. Be candid. Maybe the person will just be like, let's reschedule to a better time. Maybe they'll be happy to wait and they just know, like, I'll just go hang out in Starbucks or another cafe or something.
Yeah.
I think, on time, early, or just be candid.
I think Nazreen has a hand up.
Nazreen.
Nazreen.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just have a question for all of you, because you guys are talking about social media, and sometimes the texting part is, can go on for hours and endless, and time is wasted at times. And also the context, I think someone mentioned, is missing or gets missed. My question is basically around chemistry, attraction. Do you feel that social media allows you to pick that up? And if you can, what sensory or aids do you use to tell that you're attracted to that person? Or what is that one thing that you can get hooked on to attract with that person that you're communicating with in social media, if you can at all, through texting? Or do you think that's totally missed through texting?
I can, yeah, that's a great question, actually. So one of the things that immediately drew me to my partner was his wit. And so I was like, so you can definitely build chemistry, and obviously there's the I have a little bit of usable sight, so I was like, oh, he's really cute. But just his wit, and it's the same in person. Like, that's one of the things you could get a sense of, kind of, and then does that match the person you meet? And when it does, that's awesome. So that's where it really drives home the chemistry, is like, okay, I like what this person's persona is. Does it match who I meet?
Right. I agree.
Great. Anybody else?
Just to go off of that, I 100% agree with that. Someone's wit, the stories they tell, you can really, like, if the conversation flows naturally in text, I feel like the next step is then, however that looks, but having a verbal conversation, like over FaceTime, on the phone, in whatever texting app, and then kind of going from there. But I think through texting, I don't feel like the connection gets as deep as if you are interacting with the person in person. But I don't think that means it's any less, or I think it's different. I think it's different. And I feel like, yeah, you can still see a lot about someone's personality by the emojis that they use, by how they choose to write their sentences. Are they a grammarian? Do they not care about grammar? How do they punctuate things? Are they someone who sends really long messages? Do they send like short bursts of messages, like one right after the other? Like, I feel like there's a lot that you can still gain and decide if you like or don't like.
Anybody else? It looks like.
Yeah, I Can I just add to Lily's point really quick?
Of course.
I really like sending audio messages, but it just depends on who I'm texting. Like if I'm texting friends, like I feel like we've developed the habit of sending audio messages. Like I can tell you, I'm in a group chat with Iliana and Lily, and I don't think we've ever sent like an actual text message. I think we usually send audio messages, but it's also about if that other person chooses and if they're comfortable enough sending you audio messages. So sometimes I'll say to certain friends that I know don't really like it, I'll say, hey, like, do you mind if I send you a quick audio message? If not, totally cool, I could just type it out. And usually they're like, yeah, that's fine. And then if they want to, they'll send it back. But I really like the idea of audio messages. I know it's not necessarily giving you a good scope of the person, but having that actual sort of verbal communication instead of a text where you sort of lose a lot of the context and you sort of have this miscommunication, it does sometimes help out in, you know, certain situations.
I'm
Nice
real
answer.
quick. So the only thing that I would just circle back to, you know, and I like the fact that you said you use audio messages a lot, is because with text messages you cannot convey emotions. And so you get to really get a sense of somebody's tone of voice, their emotional state via, you know, not just talking on the phone, but audio messages. You know, if you have an iPhone or you use WhatsApp, whatever the case may be, that audio message component allows us not to necessarily talk directly like we are on the phone. And so maybe Emilee said it earlier, like I can kind of ignore you if the conversation is not going right. But it also allows me to hear your voice. It allows me to gauge your emotions because, like you said, you can say the same thing and people can misinterpret what you say based on the emotion or lack of emotion. So those things are very important. And I think a lot of blind people, I haven't necessarily personally experienced this because I have a lot of usable vision, but blind people, you know, that I had friends that are totally blind, they always say like they kind of go off of people's voices when they meet them, right? To try to figure out what type of attraction levels, like, oh, like she sounds like she's super sexy, or he sounds like he's super attractive. Like I've heard both sides of those, both sides of the coin. And so, you know, I think it's important, you know, if we're diving deeper than the physical, to be able to have and hold a great conversation, because somebody being attracted to your mind is always going to be more important than them being attracted to you physically.
I think that is a beautiful way to end this. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, for taking time out of your day. I know we went a little bit over the time limit, but you guys are all just so very well spoken. So I think it was worth it. I think it was worth the overtime.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys. You all had great answers. I loved all your stories. It was a great session. Thank you for our first Awakening the Senses session. And we really appreciate you guys being here. It was a great conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us here at Full Blind Beauty.
Thank you, everybody.
I would also like to thank everybody, and thank you, Rosa and Iliana, for hosting this for us. Rosa and Iliana, I'm not sure if you guys know, but they are part of our virtual work experience program and have been with us for several months. And this is like the first major sort of production that they've hosted with some guidance from us. And we think that they did a very, very great job. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Well done, ladies.
Thank you, ladies. Yeah.
And then just as a quick, you know, a little bit of a shameless plug. In the fall, we are also going to be doing an Awakening the Senses. So for all of you who are here, who really enjoyed this panel, for those of you who will watch when we upload this recording, we really hope that we can see you there, because we're going to have another group of wonderful panelists, some great topics, and just it will be a fun time. So you should definitely try to join for the next one that we do in the fall.
Nice.